Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world.
It's really good to be back. And today we're actually doing something a bit different. We're pivoting.
Yeah, quite a bit different from our usual.
Right. We aren't looking at, central bank policy or a new piece of surveillance technology today. We are looking at a narrative engine.
A massive narrative engine. We are doing a deep dive into The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And I think we need to set the ground rules right up front because this book carries a whole lot of baggage.
Oh, absolutely. Tens of millions of copies sold.
Exactly. It's quoted by everyone. Presidents, pop stars, point guards, you name it. But, and this is crucial for you listening, we are not here to discuss the prose style.
No, definitely not.
We aren't doing a literary review or talking about, how beautiful the imagery of the desert is.
Right. If you want to talk about metaphors or character arcs, there are plenty of other places for that. Our mission for this deep dive is strictly structural.
Institution.
Exactly. We are treating The Alchemist as a piece of software. It is an operating system for the human brain.
I love that framing. It's a meaning formation system.
That's exactly what it is.
Because when you look at the sheer scale of its adoption, translated into something like 80 languages, you realize this isn't just a story about a shepherd boy. It is a massive data set of human belief.
It's code. It is code that people are voluntarily installing to process their own reality.
And we need to deconstruct that code today.
We do. We need to understand the underlying ideology of the personal legend. That's the core concept. We need to see how this book organizes perception, how it creates these very specific incentive structures for taking massive risks, and crucially, how it rationalizes the wild variance of outcomes in life.
Why does the system work for some and completely destroy others, right?
Precisely. So let's pop the hood. Our case study is the narrative of the protagonist, Santiago.
Santiago, the Andalusian shepherd.
Yeah, and we need to establish his starting conditions to really understand the system's baseline.
His default state.
Right. He has a stable, very low-risk livelihood. He has a flock of sheep, he has a jacket for the cold, a book to read, and this tentative plan to marry a merchant's daughter.
In economic terms, he has achieved equilibrium.
He has. It is a life of extreme stability. It's the safety setting.
But then the narrative introduces a disruption. He starts having these recurring dreams.
Dreams about a child transporting him to the Egyptian pyramids to find a hidden treasure.
Now, in a normal life, you wake up, drink some coffee, think, that was weird, and you go back to your sheep.
You forget the dream.
Right. But Santiago decides to abandon his stable livelihood to pursue this destiny.
And that decision introduces the primary variable of this entire system, the personal legend. This is the core assertion of the text.
The prime directive.
Exactly. The book argues that every individual has a pre-existing, divinely written destiny. But it goes a step further than just saying you have a purpose. It argues that the universe is not indifferent to this destiny.
There's a very specific quote. When you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it.
That is the source code.
Yeah.
That is the line that runs the entire simulation. It posits that the universe is an active conspirator in your favor. It suggests that the environment, physics, weather, other people, it's all just waiting for your signal to reorganize itself.
So let's look at the design of this system first, the architecture, because it creates a very specific framework for how a person is supposed to view their life.
It starts with an encounter early on in the plaza of Tarifa. Santiago meets Melchizedek, the king of Salem.
And this character is essentially the onboarding interface, right?
He is the recruiter. He's the one who installs the software. And I want you to notice how he frames the alternative. He doesn't just say, hey, go find treasure. It'll be a fun adventure.
No, he goes much deeper.
He introduces the concept of the world's greatest lie.
Which is such a fascinating bit of psychological leverage. What exactly is the lie?
The lie, according to the king, is that at a certain point in our lives, we lose control of what's happening to us, and our lives become controlled by fate. He argues that surrendering agency is the lie.
This is a crucial inversion. Usually, when we hear the word fate or destiny, we think of a lack of agency.
Right.
You think, it's out of my hands, the gods have decided. But the king flips it completely. He implies that the personal legend is the only real obligation, and you have to actively choose it.
Correct. The system forces a binary state on the user. This is a critical observation of the design. You are either pursuing your specific pre-written personal legend, or you are actively failing your existence.
There is no neutral ground.
None at all. You cannot be a pretty good shepherd who is happy with his lot in life. If you have a personal legend to go to the pyramids, Staying with the sheep isn't just a career choice.
It is an act of spiritual failure
Exactly.
that raises the stakes immediately. I mean, it weaponizes regret before the regret even happens. It basically tells you that contentment is actually a form of giving up.
Precisely. It classifies satisfaction as a system error. But the king doesn't just give him anxiety, he also gives him tools.
The stones.
Yes. Urim and Thummim, the decision-making stones. But more importantly, he tells him to read the omens.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanism of omens, because this is how the narrative organizes perception.
The mechanism of omens is fascinating from a systems perspective. It is the user interface.
Yeah.
Think about it. In a materialist worldview, or honestly even a standard religious one, a butterfly is just an insect. A gust of wind is a pressure differential caused by temperature changes.
It's noise, it's background data, it has nothing to do with me personally.
But in the personal legend system, all things are one. The environment is not neutral background noise. It is a continuous stream of data directed specifically at the user.
It's an entirely egocentric physics.
It is. The hawk, the scarab beetle, the wind, they are converted from random environmental data into specific instructional code.
It's a signaling framework.
It is essentially augmented reality. It teaches the user to view the entire material world as a communication directed at them. It decentralizes the universe in terms of physics, but centers the universe entirely around the protagonist's narrative.
Right, so when Santiago sees a hawk flight in the desert later in the book, it's not just biology, it's a tactical warning of an army approaching.
Exactly. The external world loses its autonomy and becomes a mirror for the internal quest.
Which ties perfectly into that theological concept the book keeps hammering, the soul of the world.
Yes, the soul of the world is the server that runs this entire network. The text says it is nourished by people realizing their legends. But look at the detail there. The sun, the wind, the desert. In the text, these are metaphors.
No, they are literal.
They are conscious agents. They talk. They have desires. They are striving for their own personal legends.
So the implication is that the universe isn't just watching you, it's playing the game with you.
It posits that the universe is an active participant in human success. It completely removes the indifference of nature. Nature becomes an ally or a test, but never just indifferent nature.
That's a powerful psychological shift for the user. It validates their importance.
It tells the listener, you matter to the sun, you matter to the wind.
Okay, so that's the design architecture. You have a destiny, the world is talking to you constantly through omens, and the universe wants you to win.
It's a very appealing pitch.
It sounds like a great place to live. But why do people actually buy in? What is the hook that gets them to leave the safety of the sheep?
This brings us to the incentive structure, the economy of belief. The system needs to get Santiago and the reader to take that first massive risk, to sell the sheep, to cross the strait to Africa.
The cost of entry is incredibly high. He has to give up his entire livelihood.
And Melchizedek has a term for how the system handles this, the principle of favorability.
Or as he calls it, beginner's luck.
Right. He says, when you play cards the first time, you are almost sure to win.
Think about that as a customer acquisition mechanism.
That's exactly what it is. The system promises early, low-cost wins to lock the user in. Santiago sells his sheep very easily. He gets money. The wind is perfectly favorable for his boat ride.
The universe lowers the barrier to entry to get him hooked on the narrative.
It's a free trial period. It creates a sunk cost psychology very early on. If the universe gives you a big win right at the start, you feel validated. You feel chosen.
And that encourages the abandonment of stability.
Yes. He leaves the flock. He forgets the merchant's daughter. He commits to the high-variance pursuit, the treasure in Egypt, because the initial feedback loop was positive.
But we have to talk about the friction, because immediately after the beginner's luck, the anxiety kicks in. You've sold your sheep, you're in a foreign country, you don't speak the language.
You're completely unmoored.
That is objectively terrifying, but the book has a structural fix for that anxiety too.
Maktub.
It is written.
This is one of the most potent technologies in the book. We see this repeated by the crystal merchant and the camel driver. Maktub is a way to metabolize existential anxiety.
Let's explain how that works mechanically for the user.
If the future is already written by a benevolent hand, risk is neutralized. Think about the camel driver character. He lives an incredibly dangerous life. He walks through literal war zones. But he says, essentially, if I die tomorrow, it was written. This allows the protagonist to engage in incredibly high-risk behaviors, crossing a warring desert, confronting tribal chieftains who might execute him, by outsourcing the outcome to destiny.
It's an anxiety reduction technology. You don't have to worry about the result, only the effort.
Exactly.
It creates a psychological safety net that allows for risk-taking that would otherwise be completely irrational.
It removes the paralysis of what if. If the what if is already decided, you're completely free to act. But to really understand this, we have to look at the control group in this experiment.
The crystal merchant.
The crystal merchant.
I want to spend some time on him. He's the guy Santiago works for in Tangier when he goes broke. The merchant knows his own personal legend. He wants to go to Mecca. It's a religious obligation.
And he has the resources.
He has the money. He has the staff. He could go tomorrow, but he refuses to go.
He is the non-adopter of the system. And his reasoning is honestly the most honest part of the book. He explicitly says that the dream is what sustains him.
He is afraid that if he actually realized the dream, if he went to Mecca, he would have no reason to keep living.
That's a heavy insight. The fear of realization. He prefers the simulation of the dream to the reality of the achievement.
It represents the systemic contrast perfectly. The personal legend system incentivizes movement and change. The crystal merchant represents stability and the comfort of longing.
The book clearly positions Santiago as the correct model and the merchant as the stagnant model. But notice what happens when they interact. Santiago forces innovation on the merchant.
Yeah, he makes him sell tea in the crystal glasses. He builds the outdoor display case. He disrupts the entire business model.
And the merchant gets rich. But the merchant is uncomfortable with the growth. He just wanted things to stay the same.
Right, because the system of the personal legend is inherently expansionist. It views stability as a form of decay. It views enough as a failure of imagination.
Which leads us perfectly into the outcomes. Because you mentioned Santiago goes broke in Tangier,
Right.
we need to analyze that specific event.
He arrives in Africa, and immediately, within hours, he gets robbed of all his money by a con artist in a bar.
This is a critical moment for the institutional analysis.
Ugh.
In a realist novel or in a sociological study, a young immigrant arriving in a port city and getting robbed is a structural reality.
It's crime.
It's predatory economics targeting the vulnerable. It is a clear sign that the environment is hostile.
But Santiago doesn't see it that way. The system doesn't let him.
No. The system reframes it immediately. He realizes he can choose to be a poor victim of a thief or an adventurer in quest of his treasure.
And he chooses the adventurer.
He does. And while that is psychologically resilient, it definitely keeps him from despair.
Yeah.
Look at what the system is actually doing. It is individualizing a structural failure.
Yes.
The hostility of the external world, the fact that there are thieves preying on immigrants, is reinterpreted as a personal narrative challenge. It's framed as a test.
So if you get robbed, it's not because the city is dangerous or because there is severe wealth inequality. It's because the soul of the world is testing your personal resolve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It completely removes the political or social context of the event and makes it purely about the individual's internal state. It empowers the individual, yes, but it also absolves the environment.
It tells you that external negativity is just raw material for your internal growth.
And then we see the outcome of his work at the crystal shop. This is where the book gets very entrepreneurial.
It really is an entrepreneurial manual at that point. Santiago innovates. He takes risks. But he doesn't do it for business logic. He does it because he is following omens.
He just wants to buy sheep to get back to Spain initially.
But the result is massive capital accumulation. The shop booms. He becomes rich. He has enough money to buy a huge flock or trade license or return home a hero.
The outcome observation here is incredibly clear. The system rewards the destiny mindset with financial success. The text suggests that when one pursues the legend, economic success is a byproduct of spiritual alignment.
Which is a very seductive idea. If I am right with the universe, the market will reward me.
It's the prosperity gospel, stripped of specific religious dogma and universalized. But then look at the oasis. He meets the alchemist. There is a war going on. And the alchemist tells him, essentially, you have to sell your camel, sell your sheep, give up all your liquidity, and bet it all on the next leg of the journey.
The Alchemist is basically a venture capitalist pushing for a Series B round.
In a way, yes. The system heavily penalizes hedging. Remember the Englishman?
The guy with all the books.
Right. He's trying to learn alchemy through study. He's brought an entire library into the desert. He represents the academic approach.
The Englishman is hedging. He relies on the codified knowledge of others. He relies on safety.
While Santiago relies on action, the system requires repeated all-in bets. To find the treasure, you cannot keep a safety net. You have to leave the oasis, leave Fatima, the love interest, and go out into the war zone.
The system says security is an illusion. Only the gamble is real.
Let's talk about persistence, because the book isn't just everything goes right. It's everything goes right, then everything goes wrong, then you have to keep going.
The persistence architecture is crucial here. The Alchemist has a line about this. He says, every search begins with beginner's luck and ends with the victors being severely tested.
The darkest hour before the dawn trope.
Hi.
But structurally, it creates a feedback loop that makes the system unfalsifiable to the user. Think about it. If you fail, it is not because the legend wasn't real. It is because you didn't persist through the test.
Right. If you stop, you failed the test. If you succeed, the system works.
Exactly. There is no scenario where the system itself is wrong. The blame for failure always rests on the individual's lack of persistence or their inability to read the omens. It is a perfectly closed loop.
And the biggest obstacle to persistence, according to the book, isn't the desert or the wars. It's the heart.
Santiago's dialogue with his own heart is one of the most interesting psychological sections of the text. His heart is afraid. It wants to stop. It fears suffering. It says, hey, we have money. We have a girl at the oasis. Let's just stay here.
Which is a very rational survival instinct.
Completely rational. Evolution designed the human heart to keep you alive, not to go find imaginary treasure in a literal war zone. But the system defines this survival instinct as treason.
The Alchemist teaches him that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself.
That is a classic Stoic reframe.
It is. The operational outcome is emotional regulation. The user must override survival instincts, which manifest as fear with narrative logic.
You have to trust the soul of the world more than your own amygdala. You have to treat your emotions as a distinct entity that can be negotiated with or just overruled.
And then we get to the ultimate reversal. This is the ending. Santiago finally gets to the pyramids. He's digging for the treasure. He finds nothing. And then he gets beaten half to death by refugees from the tribal wars.
He is brutally assaulted. He is at the point of death. And in that moment of absolute failure, the leader of the attackers mocks him.
The leader says, "You're stupid for following dreams. I had a recurring dream, too, about a treasure in a ruined church in Spain where a sycamore tree grows, but I wasn't stupid enough to cross a desert for it."
And Santiago realizes that's exactly where he started. That's where he was sleeping with his sheep.
The irony is the point. But look at the persistence payoff. The failure at the destination was actually the mechanism for success. The system integrates the wrong location error as a necessary step.
If he hadn't gone all the way to Egypt and gotten beaten up, he never would have met the guy who told him where the treasure actually was.
Precisely. The system rationalizes the wasted journey. It tells you it wasn't wasted. It was the only way to get the data.
It tells the listener, even when you are failing, even when you are at the completely wrong destination, you are gathering the key to the real treasure. It converts failure into proprietary information.
Which brings us to the final layer, interconnection. Because this isn't just about finding gold coins, it's about alchemy.
Alchemy in the book is a metaphor for personal evolution. The alchemist explains that gold is simply lead that has evolved to its furthest point.
So material transformation equals personal transformation.
Yes. The universe doesn't seek stability, it seeks evolution. This links directly to cultural individualism. The idea is that the individual unit, whether a metal or a man, has a duty to evolve, to become its best self. If lead stays lead, it is failing its potential.
And then there's that scene, frankly the weirdest scene in the book. Santiago turns himself into the wind.
The scene where he is held captive by the army and has to prove his power or be killed, he holds a conversation with the desert, the wind, and the sun.
He literally argues with the sun.
And he wins the argument. This is the absolute peak of entrepreneurial risk ideology and spiritual capitalism. Look at the argument he uses. He tells the elements that he needs to transform to realize his legend.
He convinces the environment to bend his will because his purpose is aligned with the soul of the world.
It's the ultimate man versus nature, but instead of fighting nature, he manages it. He negotiates with it.
He leverages it. He treats the wind and sun not as immutable physical forces, but as resources to be deployed for his self-actualization.
It implies that if your why is strong enough, physics will yield.
If you want it enough, the universe conspires.
And finally, consider the Englishman again versus the shepherd. The Englishman has the knowledge, he has the books, but he doesn't get it. The shepherd has the experience.
It's a very anti-academic stance.
It aligns perfectly with the global self-help industry. It validates intuitive wisdom over academic rigor. It democratizes success. It says, you don't need a degree. You don't need to be born rich. You just need to be able to read the signs.
which is an incredibly appealing message. It says structural barriers, education, class, borders are completely irrelevant compared to human will.
And that brings us to the crucial pivot point of this discussion.
Okay, let's unpack this. We've looked at the design, the incentives, the outcomes, but we need to ask the hard question. What is the crisis in perception here?
The crisis lies in what this system obscures. First, consider what is being misperceived. The protagonist, and by extension the reader, is trained to perceive coincidence as confirmation. When the wind blows or a beetle appears, the system insists there is a causal link between your internal desire and that external event.
So we start seeing patterns where there is only noise.
Exactly. We see agency where there is only randomness. But the deeper crisis is the structural layer that is obscured. We call this survivorship bias.
Explain that in the context of the book.
We follow Santiago. Santiago succeeds. We see the system work for him. But the system of the personal legend makes the other outcomes invisible. We do not see the other alchemists who only wanted gold and failed.
Right.
We do not see the shepherds who sold their sheep, crossed to Tangier, got robbed, and didn't find a job at a crystal shop. They just starved in the streets.
We don't see the robber.
The robber in the final scene. He had the dream too. He dreamt of the treasure in Spain. But he didn't have the means or the literacy or the unattached status to travel.
The system hides the structural advantages Santiago had. He was literate. He had sheep to liquidate. He had capital assets. He had a safety net of marketable skills.
But the narrative frames the robber's situation entirely as a failure of faith.
Yes, surface inspiration framing fails because it suggests that wanting it enough connecting to the soul of the world is the primary variable for success.
While a systems-level analysis reveals that success is actually a variable highly dependent on external conditions and initial capital, which the narrative recodes as courage.
So when we look at The Alchemist through this lens, what do we actually see?
We see that systems-level analysis changes visibility. It reveals the alchemist not as a fairy tale, but as a manual for high-risk entrepreneurial individualism.
It depicts a world where the universe acts as the ultimate venture capitalist.
It invests heavily in those willing to risk everything, provides them with beginner's luck as seed funding, tests their persistence through market corrections like the desert, and ignores or punishes those who seek safety, like the baker or the crystal merchant.
It's Silicon Valley theology set in the desert.
In many ways, yes. It is a belief system perfectly calibrated for a volatile, individualistic economy. It tells you that your instability is actually a spiritual quest.
That is a lot to process, but it explains why the book resonates so much. It turns anxiety into purpose.
It does. And that is a functional tool. But we must understand the tool we are using.
Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly.
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.